Story 1. The man outside my window had my face, but the police only saw rain. This happened to me in 2019. I had just moved into a small apartment on the third floor of a weather-stained building in the outskirts of Portland. The lease was cheap. Too cheap, if I'm being honest. But I had just gotten out of a rough breakup and needed a place fast. Something about the bare concrete and overgrown hedges made the building feel invisible, and that suited me fine. It started during a week-long rain stretch in March, the kind where the sky doesn't change color for days, just layers of dull gray and a constant mist. I was working remotely at the time, stuck in a dead-end customer service job that only required me to log in and respond to angry emails. Most nights, I stayed up late out of habit, headphones in, zoning out to ambient noise or watching movies. That first night, I was microwaving leftovers when I noticed something in the reflection of the kitchen window. At first, I assumed it was just the shape of my own head against the darkness, but when I moved, the reflection didn't. It was standing perfectly still, too still, just behind the faint outline of the fire escape outside the window. I turned fast. Nothing. I remember opening the window slightly and listening. Just rain tapping on the metal and the faint drip of water pooling from the gutters. I shook it off as a trick of light. Maybe the condensation had distorted something. I didn't have curtains yet, so the windows stayed open to the blackness outside. It happened again the next night. This time, I paused the movie I was watching and stared directly into the glass. The reflection of the room was clear. Couch, lamp, window, and then him. This time I was sure. He was standing out there again. Same height, same posture, same face. I turned on the outside light, but it shorted with a fizz. Everything went dark for a second. When it came back, he was gone. Or maybe never there. I called the non-emergency police line that night. I wasn't even sure what I was reporting. A possible prowler. The officer I spoke to asked if I had seen him enter or leave, if he'd made any threats. I told her I just saw someone who looked like me. Her tone shifted. She asked if I was under any stress. They sent someone anyway. A single officer who walked around the back with a flashlight, checked the rusted fire escape, then came up to talk. "No signs of anyone," he said. "Are you sure you weren't just seeing a reflection?" He paused, then tilted his head slightly. "Wait, can I take a look at your footage?" I had a cheap webcam facing the window for work. It wasn't great quality, but it recorded in short bursts when it detected movement. I hadn't even reviewed it. We watched the clip on my screen. It showed me sitting at my desk, frozen, staring at the window. Behind me, in the reflection, was a second face. It didn't move at all, not even the eyelids. But the officer leaned in, rewound, played it again. "That can't be right," he muttered. I turned to him. "What?" "She blinked," he said slowly. I was confused. "What do you mean, she?" He pointed. The reflection blinked before the woman in the video did. There was no woman in the room, only me. He watched the footage one more time, his face unreadable, then clicked his pen and said he'd file a report just in case. I asked if he thought it was a trick of the light or camera distortion. He didn't answer directly, just said, "Maybe close your curtains at night." I didn't sleep much after that. By the third night, I wasn't sure if I was losing sleep because of fear or obsession. I started leaving the lights off just to see better. I stared into the windows like they were eyes. I needed to know if he was real, so I set up my old phone facing the window and activated motion capture. I pointed my laptop camera toward the same angle. Then I took a third, an old GoPro I hadn't used in years, and stuck it to the outside of the fire escape, pointing back into the room. I synced the timestamps and left everything recording overnight. I didn't sleep at all. Around 2:17 a.m., the motion alert pinged on my phone. I watched from behind my laptop as the screen flickered. In the reflection, I saw him, closer now, not pressed to the glass, but maybe just 2 feet from it. I turned toward the real window. Nothing. The street below was dark, wet, and empty. No movement. But when I turned back to the screen, there he was, not only visible but slightly clearer than before, his expression blank, my own face, but drained, like a photo that had been copied too many times. I pulled up the GoPro feed, the external angle. He wasn't there. That view only showed my face, watching an empty street. No one behind me, no figure on the fire escape, no one close to the window. I checked the laptop camera. Same result, only the phone showed him. I looked again at the reflection and noticed something else. His eyes weren't just watching, they were tracking, they followed mine. If I moved my head slightly, his head adjusted, like a delay almost. Half a second behind, I tried an experiment. I stood up and walked away from the window. Then I paused, and without turning around, I looked at the screen again. He was closer, now almost pressed to the glass. I stared for too long, not breathing, trying to process if this was a stress hallucination or something explainable, a lens illusion maybe. But the longer I looked, the more real it became. I turned off all the cameras, disconnected everything, drew the curtains and sat in the middle of the room, knees against my chest. I started leaving the lights on after that. About a week later, it happened again, only this time someone else saw it. A neighbor down the hall, James, knocked on my door early in the morning. Said he'd seen someone outside my window the night before. Said he thought it was me. But it wasn't the way he said it that chilled me. It was the way he looked at me, like he wasn't sure who he was talking to. I asked him to explain. He said it was maybe 1 a.m. Or he'd stepped into the hall to grab something from the laundry room, and when he looked out toward the back of the building, he saw someone standing on my fire escape, just staring in. He was about to call my name, but he said something about the body language made him stop. He didn't move like you, he said. I asked what he meant. He didn't blink. I called the police again, told them about the videos, about the neighbor. They came, 2 officers this time. One walked the perimeter again, the other sat down with me in my apartment. I showed them the camera feeds, what I'd saved, what I could recover. The male officer reviewed the footage for a long time. Then he asked me a question that made my blood go cold. Do you remember calling us last night? I stared at him. What? He turned his notebook toward me. Because our log shows a call from this address at 1:03 a.m. My mouth went dry. I hadn't called. He nodded slowly. It says the caller reported a man watching you through your own window. I asked if he could play the recording. He did. It was my voice, flat, calm. There's someone outside my window, the recording said. He looks exactly like me. I think I'm going to let him in. The officers exchanged glances. I don't know how to explain what happened next, because I remember everything clearly. I had not made that call. I hadn't picked up my phone. I hadn't even left the couch. But the logs were real. The timestamp matched. One of the officers hesitated before saying, "We've seen this kind of thing before. They call it mimetic split events, stress triggers sometimes, but..." He trailed off, watching me carefully. I didn't ask what the but was. They told me they'd assign a patrol for the next few nights, but nothing came of it. And the final time they responded, the new officer said something different. He leaned against the doorframe, flipped through his notes, and asked quietly, "Are you sure you weren't the one outside?" He said it in a way that felt like more than a question, as if he wasn't accusing me, as if he was warning me. I moved out the next week. Didn't take much with me. I still have the hard drives with the footage, though I haven't watched them in years. Every now and then, especially when the rain comes steady and slow, I look out the window and think I see something in the reflection. A flicker, a shape that doesn't line up. And sometimes, just for a second, I wonder if the real me ever made it back inside. Story 2. He broke into my house every night, but nothing was ever taken except time. This happened to me in 2021, in a small house I'd just started renting in northern Ohio. I'd signed the lease in the dead of winter, mostly out of desperation. The owner lived out of state and didn't seem interested in asking too many questions. It was cheap, unrenovated, and surrounded by woods on 3 sides. The house had a strange floor plan, 2 bedrooms up top, 1 sealed basement level I never had reason to open. The previous tenant left behind a few odd things: a shortwave radio in the closet, hand-sketched maps of the layout, and a set of old-fashioned doorstops made of metal. Within the first week, I started noticing small time skips. Nothing dramatic, just moments where I'd glance at the clock and it would jump by several minutes more than I expected. At first, I chalked it up to fatigue. I was working long shifts remotely, logging timesheets and project notes, and most of the time I barely left the house. I started writing myself notes just to stay organized. Sticky notes mostly, color-coded by task. I stuck them to the fridge, the mirror, the lamp beside the bed. But then I started waking up to find them changed, sometimes just a word or two rewritten. Sometimes the wording was clearer, more purposeful. I thought maybe I was half asleep when writing the originals and didn't remember correcting them, until one morning I found a note I knew I hadn't written. It was stuck to the inside of the bedroom window. The handwriting was mine, mostly, but it looked weaker, jagged, as if written with my hand while it shook uncontrollably. The note said, "Don't follow him downst." That's all. The sentence cut off, like I'd been interrupted. I checked my phone to see if I'd made any voice memos during the night, a habit I sometimes had when a dream was too vivid. Nothing. But my phone battery was drained to 0, even though I'd left it fully charged on the nightstand. When I went to plug it in, I noticed the outlet had been pulled halfway out of the wall. I don't know why, but I sat down on the floor in front of it and just stared at the wiring inside for what felt like 15 minutes. I couldn't tell you why I did that. After that, I started locking my bedroom door at night, just in case. It didn't help. I began waking up in different positions, on the couch instead of my bed, sitting in the hallway with no memory of getting there. Sometimes I'd find the fridge open. Once, the front door was ajar, with muddy footprints tracking across the rug. I checked the cameras I'd set up, but each time the footage was corrupted right at the point of transition. As if something magnetic had pulsed through the house. I tried leaving myself longer notes, explaining what had happened, who I was, what day it was, but they would always be slightly different when I found them again. Words added, timelines off, names reversed, and every so often one note would end in a warning, never complete, just hints. He wears my shoes. Don't look if he knocks again. And then the one that made my stomach turn. We're not taking turns. He's replacing me. There's something unsettling about familiarity that's slightly wrong, like waking up in a dream version of your own house. The right angles are there, but something's shifted just enough to make you hesitate before touching the walls. That's how the house started to feel. At first, it was small things. The living room tile near the front door. It shifted slightly underfoot, even though I remembered it being flush. The light switch in the hallway seemed to have flipped direction. I couldn't prove it, but it made my skin itch to see it. I had a collection of analog clocks I'd kept from my grandfather, all synchronized. I would wind them manually every Sunday morning, but now, every time I checked them, they were off, not just by minutes, but by rhythm. Like the ticks themselves were out of sync. I thought I was going insane, so I did something I never do. I asked for help. There was a woman, 2 houses down, retired, quiet. Her name was Marlene. We'd only spoken once before, when I first moved in. She brought over an old coffee tin full of pecan. I remembered that, because I never opened it. I knocked on her door one afternoon, told her I was dealing with a maintenance issue, and wanted a second opinion. I don't know why I didn't just say the truth. I think I needed someone to tell me I wasn't losing it. She hesitated for a second, then followed me up the gravel path. When we stepped inside, I noticed her body stiffen. She looked around, slowly, her eyes tracing the corners of the ceiling, the layout, the floorboards. I asked her if something was wrong. She didn't answer at first. Then she looked at me and said, "Didn't this place burn down last year?" I laughed. I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. She went on to tell me, carefully, that she remembered emergency lights in the driveway last October. She remembered waking up to the glow through her curtains and later hearing from someone at the local diner that it was an electrical fire and that the house was condemned. I told her I signed the lease in January, that I moved in after the inspection passed. She just shook her head. We walked into the kitchen. She stared at the clock on the wall, one of the old ones, and flinched. Not from the time, but the sound. "It's ticking backward," she said. I turned to it. She was right. I reached to adjust it, but the minute hand jumped forward, then snapped back to its old position. She didn't say anything else after that, just left. No goodbye. When I tried to contact the landlord, his number was disconnected. I pulled out the lease to check for an address. There wasn't one, just a signature, almost identical to mine, but not quite. By mid-April, I stopped sleeping in the bedroom. I started leaving every light on in the house. I positioned mirrors at the ends of hallways. I didn't know what I was expecting to see, but it made me feel less exposed, less surrounded, but it didn't matter, because by then he'd stopped waiting for night. I began to notice that time passed differently in each room. Sometimes I'd walk into the kitchen and come out to find dusk had fallen, when I knew it had been 11:30 a.m. minutes earlier. I started marking my forearm with a pen every hour to keep track. Eventually, I began to lose count. Some days I'd wake up and find 10 marks. Other days, just one. Once, I found a full sleeve of them, nearly 30 lines all fading into the elbow crease, and my hand, my real hand, was trembling. I went to the police twice. The first time they asked me to write a statement. I told them everything, the notes, the clocks, the woman, the backward ticking. They took me seriously, at least on the surface. The officer folded the paper in half, nodded, and told me someone would follow up. That night I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was brief, a man's voice, my voice. You shouldn't have written it down. I didn't go back to the station for 3 days. When I did, they pulled out my file, and there it was. A different report, still in my handwriting, but this one denied everything, said I'd made it up, that I was conducting an experiment. I asked to see the surveillance video of my visit. They refused. The officer who handed me back the file was the same man I'd spoken to the first time, only now he wouldn't make eye contact. He just pointed to the door and said quietly, "You've already been helped." I asked what he meant. He didn't answer. Back home, I tore apart the furniture. I wanted to find proof of the old notes, the recordings, anything, but it was all gone. Even the mirrors. In their place were sticky notes, clean, yellow, each with one sentence. "Stay inside the pattern. No more reports. Let him use the time." I tried to run. I packed a bag, got in my car, and drove for hours until I found a motel 3 towns over. I slept for the first time in days. When I woke up, the walls were the same eggshell color, the bed was the same, but the clock on the nightstand was ticking out of sync. I reached for my phone. Dead battery. I checked the mirror above the sink. There was a note taped to it. My handwriting, shakier than ever. "He followed you." To this day, I don't know what he wanted. He never took anything, never left a mark. But I keep waking up in strange places, motel rooms, parking lots. Once, inside my own house again, even though I'd moved 6 months earlier. And every time the clock by the bed is ticking wrong, always just slightly too fast. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. Story 3. She begged me to hide her, but no one else could see her. This happened in 2022 after I bought my first home just outside of Pittsburgh. It was a modest 2-bedroom ranch built in the late 60s. Clean, cheap, and located on a quiet suburban block with patchy lawns and overgrown fences. I moved in late summer, right after a work relocation, and was mostly grateful to be out of apartment life. The first time I saw her, I thought it was just an illusion. I was brushing my teeth the first night, the mirror slightly fogged from the shower. In the lower left corner, I caught a glimpse, a small face, pale, hovering over my shoulder. I turned fast, nearly dropped the toothbrush, nothing there. But when I looked back at the mirror, she was still there, thin, no more than 10 years old, stringy hair, sunken eyes, just standing at the far edge of the room's reflection, as if she was tucked behind the open door. But when I turned to look with my real eyes, she wasn't. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. I blinked. She was gone. I didn't sleep well that night. The next time was 3 days later. I was passing by the hallway mirror, a long vertical one mounted near the thermostat, and saw her crouched in the corner of the reflected room, still, watching me. I froze. This time, her expression had changed. She looked scared. Her lips were slightly parted. I stepped backward, keeping my eyes on the mirror, but again, when I turned, there was no one there. I started keeping track of where and when I saw her: bathroom mirror, hallway, and once in the reflection of the glass sliding door at night. Each time she looked more real. Her face didn't repeat like an image. It changed. Expression, posture. She was moving, reacting, but only in reflections, never directly. At first I tried to tell a few people. A friend came by to help install blinds. I asked him casually if he ever had weird mirror glitches, like shadows showing up wrong. He laughed it off. I told my sister when she visited. I even pointed to the hallway mirror. "She's right there." But she saw nothing. "You okay?" she asked, putting a hand on my arm. After that, I stopped talking about it. The last time I saw her that month, she was in the bathroom mirror again, but this time she stepped forward, closer. Her eyes were wide, her shoulders hunched like she was shivering, and in her hand was a photo. She didn't speak. She just pressed it against the inside of the mirror. I leaned in. It was old, sun-bleached, curling at the edges, a picture of my backyard, my new house, the same weathered fence, the same twisted tree by the shed, but it wasn't recent. You could tell from the color, from the furniture on the patio that didn't exist anymore, and in the bottom corner, standing by the tree, was her, smiling. On the back of the photo, just barely legible, was a faded date, August 1998. I was 5 years old then. After the photo, I stopped questioning her reality, not because I had answers, but because something in my gut told me the rules were no longer theoretical. She wasn't a hallucination. She was present, just not fully here. I kept the photo. I put it in a drawer, unsure of what else to do. Over the next few weeks, her appearances changed. She started showing up in shinier surfaces, not just mirrors, but in dark windows, in the black screen of the turned-off TV. She never moved when I watched, but sometimes I'd glance away, and her position would change by the time I looked back. She looked tired, worn down, and she started bringing objects: crumpled paper, a blanket, once even a broken plastic toy held close to her chest like it meant something. Still, she never spoke. I stopped inviting people over. I left mirrors uncovered. I started sleeping with the hallway light on. My routines shifted. I felt like a caretaker in a house that had 2 occupants now. Then one night, I woke up to cold air, sharp and wrong. The front door was open. I know for a fact I'd locked it before bed. The chain was still dangling, the deadbolt half turned. I walked slowly into the living room, every step sounding louder than it should. I flipped the switch. The lights came on, and sitting on the doormat, centered perfectly, was a drawing. Crayon on yellow paper, a stick figure house. A big sun in the corner, and next to the house, a child's figure, small with scribbled hair. Next to it, my initials were written. A red handprint, unmistakably a child's, was stamped in the bottom corner. Underneath, in jagged writing, "Thank you for keeping me." I didn't touch it, just stood there, unsure whether I felt dread or heartbreak. That's the worst part. I couldn't decide if I was protecting her, or if she was trying to protect me. After that, she started appearing closer in the reflections, not just watching, reaching. Once I woke up and found the hallway mirror fogged. No humidity, no heat, just misted over. In the center of the glass, 5 fingerprints had been pressed into it. Small, too small to be mine. I moved in spring. Too many things had changed. My sleep, my health, my ability to focus. I couldn't stay there. I found another place across town, a small upstairs apartment. The day I left, I walked through the house one last time. Nothing strange happened. No notes, no drawings. She didn't appear. It felt like she was gone. I left the key on the counter and didn't look back. For a while, life returned to normal. I tried not to think about her, or the drawing, or the reflections. I even convinced myself that maybe it had been some strange psychological break, tied to the stress of moving and isolation. But then, a few months later, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. The voice was quiet. A woman, I think. She said she was the new tenant. She sounded nervous. She didn't leave her name, but her message was short. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. I found something in the attic and thought you should know. There's a space up there, like a crawl space, hidden under insulation. I didn't even see it at first. There were clothes, small ones, like for a child, some old notebooks, a doll, but it was soaked, like it had been in water for years. Pause. There's writing scratched into the wood on the wall. Static. It says, "Still hiding. Please don't stop seeing me." I saved the voicemail. Haven't listened to it in weeks. But sometimes when I'm brushing my teeth, I swear I catch the flicker of movement in the bathroom mirror. Just a blur, like someone ducked out of view. I don't look anymore, not directly. But I keep a photo taped behind the glass. The one from the backyard. So if she comes back, she knows I remember, that I still see her, and that maybe that's enough to keep her from fading completely.